generally here I've seen myself through, I was educated here for a few of my earlier years. Anyone who wasn't normal, there wasn't either a system for them and I think even more so than the UK, because obviously the UK is probably a little bit ahead by building systems, but we're quite sort of pushed to one side.
Yeah.
How do you deal as a parent? How do you deal with that?
It was tough. I mean, I think it's getting easier now, and schools are a bit more accommodating. But my eldest was one of those children that, if you said don't jump, he was like, how high and how far do you want me to jump? And he was always the ringleader, and he was always
this guy.
you two will get on very well, I'm sure. But he pushed the boundaries. That's his thing. If you say no, it's yes. If you say yes, it's like, okay, I'm going. How far was my yes? Because I need to go beyond that boundary. Now he went to a school in Sharjah that was very strict. It was full of very well mannered, very normal children. And he did not fit in. He liked rugby. He just liked being wild. He was just a fidgeter. He wasn't particularly academic. So we ended up actually sending him from here back to the UK,
right.
Because he was never going to fit in. And sometimes you just have to realise that your child needs a different environment. So we stuck him in a rugby college in the UK where the only trouble he could have got into was wrestling sheep, which he did. But, hey, that's, it's what it was. But it doesn't mean he's a bad kid.
Yeah.
It just meant that he didn't fit the school environment.
You were obviously in a decent position, let's call it a fortunate position, where you could send him, you had back home and you could make that work. I hear parents that feel quite almost trapped.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a mindset, but maybe it is genuinely financial.
Obviously everything here costs money, and I know there's a lot of people that are struggling at the moment. But I think if your child doesn't fit in school, the chances are there's something they're going to be better at. Now, it might be that they're particularly musical, it might be that they're particularly sporty, and that's when they look at things like, like your company, and you bring them where they can let off steam and where they can feel good. The problem is, if a child is always being told in school that they're not good, they're stupid, they're getting low marks, they never feel good about themselves, and they will always be a problem child, because all children have to feel good. So that's when we need to look at, are they good at sport? Are they good at, are they good at singing? Are they good at music? What is their talent? What is the thing that's going to make them great? Now, that costs money. Obviously, not everything is free, but taking your child out cycling or taking them walking or taking, there are things you can do that don't cost money, and it's up to you as a parent to find that success route.
Yeah, right. It's interesting that I don't know if you noticed, but during the small time that I was talking the other day, I asked one question: if the mums in the room had a conversation with their children about how the children feel towards sports, and nobody put their hand up, which was, for me, was a little bit of an alarm bell. But it's exactly what you're saying. It's like, okay, we've got a kid in a class who can't add up or can't spell, depending on what they're suffering from, or just can't concentrate. But we keep on forcing them to do it, hoping it get better, rather than taking the child to one side and saying, cool, what do you enjoy doing? Yeah. Why don't we try this? And then, but how do you connect? So if a kid, we take a kid out in a certain way and understand that that particular child loves sport, we still understand that basic mathematics and English skills are quite important for life. How do we then bring that sport back in? Because that's the key, right? Well,
do you know what? I had this really interesting, I've always been, I always deal with kids that they want to be a footballer or they want to be a tennis player or, and I had this really interesting conversation. I don't know if you know a guy called Patrice Evra. No. Okay, so he plays football, apparently quite good football. I have no idea. I don't know. And he said to me, I think he was captain of France, but played to a very high level. And when I was having supper with him, he said to me, I only had one plan. My plan was plan A. I wanted to be a footballer. Now, up until that point, I always said to children, I said, well, that's great. You need to have a plan B as well. And something with what he said really resonated. And actually, if you want to do something, have a plan A. You don't need a plan B because you've got plan A. And I think sometimes we're very good at sort of saying, okay, you're okay at sport, you're good at sport, but you still got to do maths and English. Now, the child's now torn between two things. they're good at sport, but they're not going to become excellent because we're still holding them back. We're still not telling them they're amazing. Now, yes, they do have to get English and maths because to progress into anything, you do need English and maths. But that doesn't have to be the main focus, does it?
No, absolutely not.
And if they don't get English and maths when they're 16, they can get English and maths when they're 30, if they need it at that point in their lives.
Do you think that's... We're saying the current education system has its downfalls, but do you think that's maybe a downfall of the older education system, that it's like once you finish school and university, that's education done? But you just brought up something, and we're seeing it even more now. People are furthering their education at 30, 32, 30, 40 years old. I've got friends that are, and it's not just PhDs. A lot of it could be
just retraining,
or going back to things.
I go into quite often when I go into talks, and one of my favourite questions to say to people, how many of you have got a degree? And 90% of the room will put their hand up and say, yes, I've got a degree. And how many of you are using the degree that you qualified in? Yeah. And we're down to 2%. And I think sometimes, I think university is a great place for kids to learn to be independent. I don't think it's a great place for them to choose the career for the rest of their lives.
Yes, I agree. But we're in the education system, that's what we're telling them to do.
Absolutely, you do your GCSEs, now you focus on science or arts or whatever, you take your 3 A-levels and then you go to university. I'm not sure. I think from here it's a great idea for kids to go to UK universities simply because they need to get out of the safe environment that they've lived in all their lives here. And I think that's absolutely essential. But I don't think it's essential for them to say, I must do accounting because I'm going to be an accountant for the rest of my life. No. Go and do your degree, enjoy it, do a degree you really love, and then choose what you want to do for the rest of your life.
Maybe it's the enjoyment factor that I had at university that makes me not remember anything that I did at university.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm very glad there wasn't social media when I was in university.